Believe we're recording. Yeah. All right. So I went over. I looked at the video I made last week, and in absolute act of buffoonery, the last half of the class, there is no screen recording because I had unplugged it, plugged it in my laptop to do the demo that didn't work, and then when I plugged it back in, it didn't pick up the secondary screen over here. It picked up the other monitor, so you can hear me, you can hear the audio, but you can't actually see what's going on. So I thought tonight what I would do is I would kind of quickly go through the process of creating a table view driven app. So it's kind of like a quick review, get that up and running so I have a recording of it, so at least you can like go back and watch it if you want. And then we would move on from there. So I'm going to cover basic table view, and navigation to a secondary view controller. And then in the secondary view controller, we'll have an image view embedded in a scroll view, and then we'll learn how to pan and zoom the image, pinch the image, rotate the image, navigate back, and then time permitting, we'll make a little bit more sophisticated table view controller with pictures in it and stuff like that. So that's the plan for tonight, and then next week, hopefully we can actually do a data-driven table view controller, pulling data out of a file. And I think after tonight, though, we'll probably have another assignment. It sounds like a plan. If everyone's on board with that, otherwise we can wait till next week and make it a little bit harder assignment. So we can do it one of two ways. As we move forward, we can make like quick little knockoff assignments that cover smaller portions of material, or I can incorporate like 3 classes into a bigger assignment that's a little bit more robust. So it's kind of up to you guys how you'd like to handle that. Little chunks, a lot of assignments, or bigger chunks with heftier assignments.
I think I like A a little better.
Okay. All right, then we'll stick with the smaller ones. Then we'll have our comprehensive one at the end. Kidding. All right. So I'll open up Xcode. I'm going to create a new one since last one, half of it's missing. So I'm going to do a single view application. This one I'll call table. If you guys already have if you followed along last week and you got up to the end, you don't need to do this. You can use the one from last week. I'm going to kind of recreate it because I'm going to move along pretty fast right away. So next, create. And then I had some assets that I had you guys use. Some tree pictures, I think. Let's see. I'll pull these out. Actually, I'll just drag these right over into my project. Drag them right over. Again, remember whenever you add assets to your project, make sure you copy it, check the copy items if needed, and create groups. And there's my pictures, so that's all good. Going into my storyboard file, first thing I usually do is I usually set the size, characteristics, simulated metrics, and it's just simulated. That's, want to emphasize that. This is not actual, but it's simulated, so it gives you an idea of what it'll look like on a certain device. So I'll pick a 4-inch iPhone this time. And if you go with the smallest size, like we support down to 3.5-inch iPhones, depending on who you work for. If you do your own project, you can kind of define what your minimum hardware configuration is and your minimum OS configuration. We have found that in our market share, about 97% of people, I think it is, are on iPhone 8.4, iOS 8.4 or newer. So that's what we support. iOS 9 changed a lot of things, but if you go down to iOS 7, which is a very, very small segment of current users, then you run into some more challenges. So anyway, enough of that. I have my storyboard, I have my view controller. I'm going to go ahead and plop a table view onto that right away. So there's a table view. There's two different types of table views: the table view controller and the table view control. Actual table view, which is what I'm going to use. Keep my parent view controller just a standard view controller. And size this guy. Set some constraints on it right away. Center it horizontally, and then I'm going to maybe also set a constraint to keep it a certain distance from the top. Vertical spacing to layout guide, and I'll set that be about 40 in case we have a navigation bar. Alright, so there's the basic table view setup. I'm going to go ahead right away, go into my outlets, and in here you can set up your data source and delegate for your table view to be your view controller. I'm going to do that right away. Drag those right over, set those up. So now I have those established. Next thing I'm going to do, now that I have that done, is actually go into the code. And in here, I am going to wait for it to be ready. Once it's ready, then we'll add some stuff. It's working pretty hard at this. All right. Wouldn't think that'd be that hard, but apparently. There we go. All right. So this is going to be a UITableView data source and delegate. So again, this is a common pattern that Apple uses. They have your controller class quite often will handle UITextView delegates, UITableView delegates, PickerView delegates, any number of things. You can have it be delegates for one controller, be multiple delegates as well. Pretty common. All right, so now they have that. Of course, I have the nasty little stop sign telling me I got to implement some functions. One of those is number of sections in the table view. This one I can go ahead and just code it to 1. Let's see, another one is going to be table view number of rows and section. Can also code that to 1. And then you can do cell for row and index path. And that will complete what we need for basic functionality. For right now, I'm just going to code in a basic constructor for a UITableView cell just to satisfy the compiler. And then up here we had an array. And this was an array of strings that represented our tree types. And don't worry, once I get caught up to where we left off last week, I'll slow down. Keep the case sensitivity correct. Pine and willow. All right, there's my list of my array of trees, and then so now in my number of rows, instead of 1, we can return trees.count. And then the last thing I need to do is code up my self-row index path. Well, not the very last thing, but recall that with table views, table view cells, which are the table view, so at the highest level you have the controller, then inside the controller is a table view, inside the table view is a table view cell. So you have to register the table view cell that you're using. So I'm going to say, I'm not going to say anything. First I have to create an outlet for my table view. So I'm going to go back into my storyboard, and I'm going to call upon my handy dandy assistant editor. And then with this, I'm going to go ahead and create an outlet for my table view. Control drag over here. And I'm just going to call table view. There's my table view. Now that I have that guy, now I can go ahead and I can code to it. Get this stuff down. All right. So what I was going to say before, and then I realized I didn't have a property for my table view, is the table view will register the table view cell types, so that you can have multiple cell types and that kind of thing. For some reason, they came up with this method of recognizing a type of cell. So this is just going to be, if it's just a standard table view cell, you can just use the standard class name and then .self, and then that will basically, that's like telling it the type of class you're registering, and the reuse identifier. Just keep it short and sweet for cell. And now that we've registered this and the view did load, we don't have to register it again. It's saying, okay, the table view is registered the UITableView cell with this identifier. So anytime you dequeue a cell, recalling that when you have a table view, it only shows the cells that are visible. Those are active, and then when it's ready to scroll, it pulls more cells out of memory. It dequeues them, and it dequeues them using the identifier. So down here, self row index path, get rid of this, and I can say I'm going to move this up a little bit. So let cell equals table view .dequeue reusable cell with identifier. So this is best practices with Apple is you use this method of creating a table view cell. You reuse an existing cell, saves on memory, saves on, it's just more efficient. And the identifier, of course, is cell. You could make this a const property at the top of your class, probably instead of hard coding, but for the purposes of demonstration, this works just fine. And then cell.text label, which is the label that is in there, .text is going to be equal to, let's say, self.cheese. Index path is our path to happiness. .row. And then we can go ahead and return that cell. And it's complaining because probably need an exclamation point, a couple of them. All right, so now we have everything coded up that we should be able to see a list of trees. Yeah, we should be good. If I didn't wire things up in here using our handy dandy mechanism with the outlets, like I did with these guys, then we'd probably have to do it programmatically. Where you'd say, oops. In here, you'd say, and the view did load. You'd go like table view dot data source equals self, that kind of thing. So you can do it either way. This should work just fine too, but sometimes it's handier, a little bit more reliable, just to let Xcode do it. All right, so if I run this, and when we do our image view stuff tonight, we're going to do that. We're going to do that in the raw. We're going to do it programmatically because it actually works better that way. So get a chance to do things both ways. So anyone get started on assignment 2 yet?
I read it.
Yeah.
Do it while it's fresh in your mind. Yeah, I was hoping with my demo that I was gonna show you that last week, because we actually have a control that is a combination tree view control and picker control all in one. But that just didn't happen. And the always lightning fast simulator. So you guys remember a lot of your Android stuff? Android does not have a handy-dandy mechanism like this for dequeuing reusable cells, and as a result, we ran into a problem where we ran out of, we had to actually make our Android version of our app into a large heap app, which means it allocates more memory off of the system heap for the application, which is not really a good thing. So that was kind of sketchy looking, but there they are. Very wispy looking font for some reason. Okay, so there is the basic table view control. We're almost to the point where we were last week, but what we got to do now is we got these list of trees. It doesn't do much, so we're going to actually navigate to a secondary view controller. And the way I did it before was I went out to my storyboard, and I went ahead and dragged one of these bad boys right out onto it. View controller. And close this. Just put it right out there, and then I change the simulated metrics on it right away. Matches the other one, so it's a little bit easier to manipulate. And then with this, this is going to be the guy we're going to browse to, or not browse to, but navigate to. So now I need to have a view controller that's just like this out of the box, plain Jane view controller. We have to make it our own. So we're going to create a class for it. We're going to do a new file, corporate touch class, and this one will be, I think I called it photo view controller. Subclass of view controller, that's great. And go next. Create. There it is. So to distinguish this, to make sure that it's actually navigating to the one we created, you can say self.view.background color. We're dealing with trees, so we can say UI color.green color. That way when we get to it, if it's green, we know we did things right. So next thing we got to do is, now that we have this guy and we have our photo view controller, we have to wire them up so that Xcode knows what interface file is associated with what class. So in here I can just click on this, make sure it's selected, and then go into my identity inspector, third guy over, and the class is going to be photo view controller. So that tells it your view controller for this storyboard file is going to be the photo view controller, which is this guy, and all is well. So the next thing is, all right, so we have our table view controller that displays a list of trees. We have our other view controller here that we intend to do something with the tree pictures, but we don't have them connected at all. So we need a way to connect them. So to do that, I select my table view over here, and then I'm going to create a prototype cell over here in the table view properties panel. Right now it shows 0. I'm going to create a prototype cell, and what that allows me to do is, with the prototype cell in place here, I can create what's called a segue by control dragging from the prototype cell over to here. First I gotta make sure I have it selected, over to here. And when you do that, that pops up this guy, which it knows, because of the fact I'm going from a table view cell to another controller, it knows I want to create a segue. It's just incredibly smart that way. A show detail segue is typically used in like an iPad app where you've got a master detail. I just want to show a segue. I create that. That creates this little navigation arrow that points to the other view controller, and then I give it a name. call it show photo. That kind of wires them up. Then the last thing I need to do to make this actually happen is go back into my first view controller. And in here, you need to implement another function. Table view did select row at index path. Make sure you don't pick the did deselect row, because then frustrating things happen. Did select row. And for right now, all we're going to do is we're just going to go over to that second view controller to make sure navigation works. So we can say self.perform segue with identifier is what we want. This will cause the segue to fire off, and the identifier for our segue was called show photo. So we set in the properties, and the sender is just us, ourselves. And now we have all the underpinnings, all the wiring to be able to make this segue happen. And if it's done correctly, then the second view controller should pop up with a nice bright green color. And there it is. Kind of stuck there because we didn't actually devise the means of getting back, so we got to do that. So I'll put the back button on there, and I think that's about where we left off last week, so that should get us current to where the part that I did not record. So in the second one, in here, I'm going to create a button that will allow us to navigate back. And if you don't have the code from last week, if you don't have the project, I did put it up on Blackboard, so you can pull it down and you'll be up to where we are right now. There's my back button. I'll put him up higher. And then I'm going to go ahead and wire up an action, an IB action for our back button. So if I pick the view controller and go into the no, I don't want to do either of those. I want to go to the assistant editor. Close this down. Now I can go ahead and wire up an action for this. Put it down here. So I want to change that from outlet to action, and I'll just call it go back. UI button, connect. And then in there, what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate back to the first one. And the way we can do that, this is a modal view controller. So when we pop this thing up, you notice it slides up from the bottom. So it's modal, it's not on the navigation stack. So we can just say self.dismiss view controller animated, and that will dismiss itself, passing in true for the animation, and we don't have a completion handler because we're just getting rid of ourselves and going back, so we can just say nil for the completion handler. And then we should have a means of getting back to where we came from. All right, beautiful. Okay, so I think this is about where we left off from last week.
Hey, Sean, quick question.
Yeah.
So from the code that you had on Blackboard to that one, for the did select row index path, the ascender, what you typed there was self, and what you had was table view. What's the difference there?
If you needed to use in the receiving class, if you needed to like communicate with the sender, you could use that. Like if you needed the table view for something, that actually was kind of typically what you'd do is you'd use the view controller, not an object inside it. So probably a little brain fart on my part, but yeah, you generally want to keep navigation stuff, data stuff contained at the view controller level.
Okay.
So, but yeah, anything could pretty much be in there. Okay, so now I think we are caught up. next thing we need to do is make this a little more meaningful. So in our second view controller, that's where we want to show a picture of our awesome tree. So what I'm going to do in my second view controller, my photo view controller, is have a property up here. Tree name. And that's just a string. Okay, so we're gonna tell the receiving view controller what the name of the tree is to display, and the receiving view controller will go ahead and display that. That's how we'll start this off. So now in our second view controller, what I'm going to do is bring up the object library, and we'll get an image view, and we'll plop the image view on there. And I'll slow down. Gotta remember to slow down now that we're caught up. So I'm going to take the image view, pull that over onto my second view controller, and plop them in there. And I'll kind of size him up. Most of the images are about the same size, but we'll give this guy a pretty decent size. Make sure it's centered, so do a control drag down and center it horizontally. And maybe do a vertical constraint as well. So in the vertical spacing constraint, I'll set that guy to be like, let's say like 60. Gives us room for our button at the top and stuff. And if I go too fast, whoever, let me know. And if you have to skip anything, skip the constraints because they're not critical. All right, so that's going to be our image view. We'll create an outlet for that guy here in our photo viewer view controller. So I'm control drag over here, create an IB outlet, and I'll call it tree view. Okay, so we're going to populate that with a picture of the tree. Everyone good so far? All right. Okay, so now going back in here, we need to go back into our first view controller into the code because we need to pick the selected tree name to give to the second view controller. So I go back into the first view controller's code file. And the way we're going to do that is in our handy dandy did select row and index path. I'm going to maintain a class global variable in here called selected tree strength. And when we do the did select row and index path down here, I'm going to set my selected tree to be equal to the trees at indexPath.row. And then the only thing we have left to do is tell our receiving view controller what that is. So I'll give it a minute for you guys to type that in if you need to. Okay, so we have that. Now what I'm going to do, there is another, when you create a navigation mechanism using segues, you have a built-in function called prepare for segue. Prepare for segue actually, I think, comes along if you create any UI storyboard based application. You can call this prepare for segue, but it gets wired up when you when we make the call to perform segue with an identifier. That makes a call, a base class call, and then when that happens, it automatically will call this prepare for segue. So this is like a last minute thing, a preparation thing that you can do to get ready before you navigate to your next object, your next view controller. So in the segue object, which is a UI storyboard segue, it has some handy functionality. So I can say let's see, we'll call this photo controller equals segue dot destination view controller as photo view controller, and this is it's gonna scream at me for that. Didn't quite move fast enough. I need the exclamation point there. All right, so that's one of the things that's kind of handy with segue navigation, is that this guy, this UI storyboard segue, contains the source, I believe it's called source view controller, and a destination view controller. And because in Swift you don't have to have header files and stuff, it just knows about everything that's in the project. It knows that what a photo view controller is, and so it also knows that it has that property that we created called tree name. Maybe it doesn't know that. That's because I used the class name and not the object name. Photo dot tree name equals self dot selected tree. And voila, like that, we've got the tree in the second view controller ready for it to load. Okay, so does that make sense how that works? Yeah, it's pretty handy navigation mechanism that Apple has. Pretty simple. So you can create all kinds of properties in your destination controller and then set those, and then when it loads, a common use of this is like if you have a list of, like, say for example, users or people of some kind, and you tap on one of the in a table view, and you tap on one of them, and then it loads up the second view controller with properties associated with that person, you know, like first name, last name, date of birth, that kind of stuff. It's a pretty common use of it. So we have our second view controller. We need to now do stuff with the photo. So in here, view did load. So the view did load will get fired after our segue performs. So we should have that tree name populated. So I can say let image equals UIImage named, and it's going to be tree name. And then we can just say okay, so because of the fact that that is an optional variable, I had to put the exclamation point at the end of it. That's what the compiler was complaining about. So now we can just say tree view dot image equals image. That should load it up for us, so we'll see if that works. Yep, there's a birch. There's an oak. There's a pine. Okay, everyone got that working? All right. So I give you guys a couple minutes. Next thing we're going to do now that we have this image is can't really do anything with it. So next thing we're going to do is actually allow the user to manipulate it, pan it, zoom it, rotate it. All right, so if you guys are ready, and if you're not ready, let me know. But if you are ready, we're going to go ahead and take the next step, which is going to be a little bit bigger one. So what we're going to do next is, now that we have this really nice, handy-dandy display, our funky tree thing that slides up from the bottom, we're going to get rid of it. We're going to back right out of it. I'm going to come out to my storyboard, and I'm just going to whack it. I'm going to delete that, because we're going to do this using, we're actually going to use it code to create this, what we want to do. I'm going to go over here. Now that we have this, we need to get rid of our outlet for it. It looks like we are okay there. Go back into the code. So I did that on purpose because I know that because this will allow you the opportunity to see how you can back out of something like this and do it using code. So I'm going to get rid of this outlet here. That's no longer valid because we deleted it from our storyboard. And I'll get rid of this as well. And so now we're just back to basically where we were. So what I'm going to do next is we're going to recreate this, only we're going to recreate it with a lot more feature functionality to it. And then we're going to programmatically manipulate it to optimize it. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create one of these guys, a scroll view. Variable. A scroll view is a handy mechanism you can use for like if you create like an e-reader app, or you have something where you have content that's going to be larger than one screen full. You can use a scroll view for that. It's also very, very useful for photos and photo manipulation because it has built-in functionality to allow panning and zooming. It doesn't come just out of the box. You have to do a little bit of coding, but it's basically there and relatively easy to set up. So we're going to have a scroll view, and then we're also going to have a photo view. Now these are not IB outlet variables. These are just standard variables. Image view. So the photo view, what we had before, now is going to be contained inside of the scroll view. And the scroll view is going to kind of manage that instead of the overarching view. So we can keep our image thing there. That's all good. And we can go ahead and construct our image view right away, our photo view. Image view. Oops. With the image that we created. Up here, our image. Okay, so that sets the photo into our image view. Now to make this work, to make the photo editable, basically, we have to set the user interaction enabled to be true. That allows the user to interact with it. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is create the scroll view that contains the image view. And the scroll view I'll create using a frame. And I'm just going to use, pretty common practice is just to use the overall bounds of the window. So we can say, for that, we can say self.view.bounds. And that basically defines the size of our scroll view. And I'm going to set the background color of it. So you can readily see where it is. Oops. Because our main view is green, and this guy's going to be black. Now, in a scroll view, what tells it basically how large the content that it has is a property called content size. And we can go ahead and set the content size, which is a CG size object. So CG stands again for core graphics. Core graphics is what was used for years and years in Objective-C until they came out with Swift and they updated some of their drawing libraries, but still a lot of when you create stuff programmatically, you're still using the core graphics library a lot of the time. So the content size of the scroll view is going to be the photo view dot size, dot bounds dot size. So that's telling the scroll view how large the content is that's inside of it. And we got a few mixing, unwrapping operators there. No need to worry. It figures it all out. All right, now, so these are basic properties of the scroll view. Background color is not really necessary, but content size is. You have to always set the content size. It could intuitively set it based on what you're giving it, but they allowed the flexibility for you to define it in case you want to. You can use that for like cropping and stuff. That's the reason why you would define the content size, in case you want like a portion of an image instead of an entire image. Another thing we need to do is set something called the auto resizing mask. This is a bit mask property of the scroll view that tells it how you want it to size stuff. And this is an array. This used to be an actual bit mask where you'd OR stuff. Now it's an array. Flexible height and flexible width is what we're going for. So these are array elements, so you just separate them with commas. And this is something that's brand new, this auto resizing mask. So if you're out like looking to see, like if you want to just do a quick check and you go to like Stack Overflow and you're looking for like auto resizing mask examples, this is really new. They just changed this. So up until iOS 9.2, you used a bit mask, and with iOS 9.2 and higher, you use this array. So if you find an example that uses the old style, it actually won't compile. Another thing we need to do before I go any further is up here. This is another example where you're implementing a delegate. Our class is now a UIScrollView delegate, which means that events that get fired by the scroll view get handled by this class. All right, so basically all we've done thus far is we set a scroll view, set it to the size of our main window, put a photo view. We haven't actually put the photo view in there yet, but we created a photo view from an image, set some basic properties on it, set some basic properties on the scroll view. Now what we need to do is tell the scroll view who the delegate is, just like we did with table views and picker views. Set the delegate to be ourselves. Now, the next thing we want to do in order to be able to zoom an image and pinch it is we need to tell it how small it can go and how large it can go. Again, this is done with the scroll view. So the scroll view is a pretty powerful object. This is minimum zoom scale. I'm going to set it to 1/10 of its normal size. Set the maximum to be, we'll go like 4. If you go too big, it gets kind of unwieldy. Plus, it gets to be a memory hog. If you have this something like this, it says prefix equals is reserved. That's because you need a space between the equal sign. All right. So next thing I'm going to do is actually add the image view to the scroll view using our handy dandy add subview. So this guy is pretty pervasive. You always call this when you're adding when you're creating stuff programmatically. So you add the image view, and then the next thing we need to do is add the scroll view. And that actually adds the scroll view to the main view. Now I think there's one more thing we need to do yet before this will function. And this is a delegate method. So this is called the view for zooming in scroll view. And this method is available because we defined this class as a UIScrollView delegate. And so because we did that, this automatically comes along, this view for zooming in scroll view. And for that, all we need to do is say return the photo view. The photo view is what we're zooming. All right. Unless I've forgotten something, I think that should handle what we need to do. All right, go ahead and run it. Okay, so to pinch and zoom, if you press the Alt key down, you get like 2 circles. Hold that down, and then as you move them apart and back together, your photo should zoom in and out. You can also pan sideways. And you can make it really tiny too. Okay, does everyone have that? Lost my back button though.
I was hoping it would go away.
It persisted.
It did.
All right. What's the exception?
Terminating app due to uncaught exception, NS unknown key exception. reason table app 1 for view controller is doing something funny. Set value for.
Does it actually say that? That'd be awesome if it said that.
What?
That'd be a lot more fun message to read. Yeah.
The class is not key value coding compliant for the key go back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that means there's something messed up with the IB action. This guy here.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, if you go into the main storyboard. In the main storyboard, this guy should have, or actually the view controller itself should have that action set up as a received action. It should look something like that.
Receive directions, go back, touch up inside. Yep,
So that's what you have?
I do.
Okay. Then in the class itself, in the storyboard file, it is set up as a photo view controller?
Yep.
Okay. That I'm not sure, because I would have thought that the action was something wrong with that. Do you have, for your outlets, do you have these guys like this set up?
You.
And nothing additional? Like no
Oh, my top one says something different.
up here?
Yeah, it doesn't say view, it says go back.
Okay.
And I have view and view as well.
Okay.
In that, do I get rid of the go back one?
Get rid of the go back one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens. Okay.
Another reason why I sometimes just like to do things programmatically, then you don't have to deal with that. You don't have to worry about key value coding compliance stuff.
I'm more happy now, but I'm not quite getting it. There's no huge error.
Progress.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sean, I'm getting an error that I have no segue identifier show photo.
Okay.
I'm seeing my segue with the identifier. It looks like I've got it.
Typically, that happens when there's a case sensitivity issue. Like when you call the prepare or the, I would just copy out of here. That usually that's what the problem is this is slightly differently named than what you have in the code.
Oh, okay.
So in the prepare for segue guy, just make sure that you have that the show photo is the same thing. Not prepare for segue, but to perform.
Yeah. It looks like it.
Okay. And in the storyboard file, this guy looks like this, and it's set up as a regular show segue.
How would I?
So if you
Yeah,
select,
show EG push, yep,
okay,
and show photo. I had a case issue. Initially, it was a capital S, and I changed it right there. to
Uh-huh.
small s. I think it was still having the same issues. Let me just make sure I restart it.
yeah, make sure you recompile it. Even sometimes it helps to clean it as well.
Oh,
Do a clean and then a build, because that's actually part of the resources.
okay.
All right, I kind of obscured my.
And it was alt to do the zooming. It looks like it's building now.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to try something here quick. Do my scroll view. That's fine. Okay, where I create my scroll view, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to call a core graphics function called rectOffset, and I'm going to pass in the scroll view frame as the rectangle that I want to offset. Offset at 0 in the X and about 50 in the Y. And what that does is generates an error. UIScrollView. Oh, that's because I didn't do the dot frame. So what that does is it kind of shifts it down. And then hopefully that will reveal our underlying button. Yeah, now I got our back button back. All right, so that again is CG rect offset rect, and that basically does just what the name implies. You give it the frame or the rectangle you want to offset by a certain amount. You give it a delta X, which is 0, delta Y, which is 50. Going down is a positive. You can also you can give it a negative value in either direction, and it'll offset it either left or up. So that gives us our back button back. Okay, well that's covered a fair amount of ground here in our first hour, so I'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then after we get back from break, we'll rotate the image, and then we'll go back and modify our tree view to be a little bit more robust. Put a heading in it and all that good stuff, and then we'll call it good. I'll leave that recording so I don't screw something up.
Thank you. Was Dexia hit again? Still thinks it works a little better. This is so exactly what I was trying to do on my project.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, for the assignment, I was like, I want the photo to slide up and then do this thing to photo. So I guess I'll do something like that.
So my question kind of comes into play is if we make a web service and app ASP.NET,
Uh-huh.
would it be able to communicate with a PHP website, or do they both have to be the same language?
No, they don't have to be.
Okay.
The only thing that they have to agree upon is the contract that you're sending back and forth the data.
Data is being sent in
The same format.
the
Yep.
same format. So if I have a API that's sending JSON or XML, the website has to accept either the JSON or the XML that
Yeah.
it's receiving. Okay.
And read what's sent and display.
Okay.
So you're using PHP to build the website?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what Trevor's doing.
Yeah, it's got what HTML going right now.
HTML, PHP.
And he's doing all the stuff with PHP.
Yeah. That should work fine. Yeah, I haven't done much with PHP myself. I've been done .NET, some Angular stuff, but not much with PHP. So you're kind of on your own, or I won't be able to be a help for you there. But I can certainly help you with the .NET stuff.
Okay.
We the last project we did for iOSClass last year was a bus tracker app that used a .NET Web API, REST API, and it just read values out of a JSON document, and the server app, which was simulating a bus, would send geolocation coordinates up to the server, the API, I should say. The API then would take those, store them, and then the client, which was like a parent using a cell phone to see where their kid's bus is at,
Right.
would receive those coordinates, and then it would update the bus and show it moving. So
Right.
that was all done in ASP.NET on the server.
So like it sounds really similar. Kind of what we're trying to do is the API is going to accept the information that Delta's sending us through a URI, and then that's going to be stored in our database, and then our database is going to be the one to update our dashboard to display what like the current status of the jobs and everything are. And we haven't done anything with APIs, so I've been reading a lot on them. It's just the file structure on the APIs. I don't completely understand on how they're like laying out the file structure, and I get the rework of the URL to make them on resources instead of a action and nouns instead of verbs. I just don't know how to implement it when we have a website up and running, as well as being able to accept the information from Delta, like their get URI process.
Okay.
That's where I'm kind of running into a giant wall.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. If you haven't done that stuff before, that can be kind of.
What platform did you make the API in? Did you use like Visual Studios or?
Yeah, I use Visual Studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And they have a template, a template wizard that you can just whip up a.
right, and
REST
I
API.
saw that a bunch when I was trying to look things up, so
Yeah.
that's what I was going to see if I could use it. I just wanted to make sure that ASP.NET would work with a PHP website. That's all. And then my other question is, if we updated anything from our website, would we send data then to our API, or okay, so we don't send it straight to the database, we send it to our API.
Yeah, and then the API would update the database. So you do a post or a put, depending on whether you're updating or inserting.
Okay.
And then the API would handle that and do the insert into the database.
Okay, perfect. I'll see what I can do with that. Thank you. That
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
helps a lot.
All right.
Oh, yeah, I wanted a snack.
Oh, I know, people do that to me, I go, I'm not that fast.
All of these rules are required.
And especially, I hate it so much when the few times I actually I'm jogging down the road, you know, going against traffic like I'm supposed to, they swerve around like I'm some kind of moose, and I feel so enormous.
You're not used to that.
No. Yes, not.
I remember when I first started going bike riding around here.
Yeah, you can't bike ride around here.
As long as it's straight. That's
They kind of, there's a lot of drivers that freak out.
right. Some people are. Some people
Yeah.
pass you like
Yeah, or you're about to explode and get blow over them or something. You know, I can't figure it out.
watch out.
Yeah. You know, I'm like kind of going in a straight line, but at any point, I could totally take a 90.
Swerving from side to side.
They just get around. Like, whatever. Yeah.
What's that? Form key. Oh, we have a form key. I can send it to you again. It's on my hard drive. No issues. Oh, was that? I'll go back and send you. I'll send her.
When you're not busy.
Yeah, I don't want to connect this to the Mac, but last time I did that, it screwed my laptop. I'll have it for you.
Okay.
I wouldn't believe that IT was super suspicious.
What?
I wouldn't believe that IT was super suspicious.
Right? Yeah. I've been like, I've been doing a little bit of shit myself actually. My computer's running nice now. And because it's running nice,
That's ridiculous. Don't change what's happening.
I'm not switching shit. I'm not changing a thing. I'm this close to graduating. I gotta get done. If everything implodes now, I'm so screwed. I just keep dropping. Everything goes in Dropbox, and then just do a little dance and turn everything off properly.
I've literally just started.
But I'm seriously doing superstition.
I know this stuff.
You're only 10 chapters.
So bad.
Okay.
I like it. I should just.
So, John,
Yes.
what I did was I pulled down a JSON document that we were using for our bus tracker app. And so I opened this guy up in brackets. This is basically the structure of the document. So this is an array of bus locations, latitudes, and longitudes. So this is typical JSON structure.
Right.
So if you had an array of elements, you know, and the elements were dictionary items,
Right.
you know, this is what it would look like. So if you want, I can give you that source code that I used to create that.
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Here's the answer. We use it. I love that.
Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to rotate that image. We can now pinch and zoom it and stuff like that, but we also may want to rotate it. So to do that, the scroll view kind of comes with a pinch and zoom gesture recognizer built into it, and that's how it does what it does. But to do the rotation, it doesn't come with a rotation recognizer, so we need to create one of those. And so what we're going to do is there's different types of gesture recognizers that are available. There's swipe, pan, long press, rotation, all these guys. So any one of these that you can drag and drop onto an object. It really doesn't do a whole lot for you other than just associate a variable, but you can also just, any one of those you can create programmatically. So that's what we'll do. Oops. So we can create a UI rotation gesture recognizer. And when we do that, we can set the target. And we can set the action, which is what happens when you actually do a rotation. So the target actually is, that's can be a little bit misleading. By target, what it means is who's going to actually handle, where's the code going to live that handles the rotation. And that is actually in the view controller, so that's self. And the action we haven't defined yet, but we'll say call handle rotate. All right, so that is just simple code to create it. Then the other thing we need to do, fully implement this, once again, as with the other stuff we've been doing, we need to define the delegate. So let's see, gesture, not rotation. Doesn't go down to the rotation level. UI gesture. Oh, wow. Gesture recognizer delegate is what we want. So now it will be delegated the tasks that happen when a rotation occurs. So we have to, like with other stuff, tell it what its delegate is. Delegate. All right, the last thing we need to do, this won't fully implement the gesture recognizer, but this will be the last setup item we need to do, is we need to have the object that we're actually going to rotate, which is the image view, add the gesture recognizer onto itself. But it's actually photo view. And that is done with add gesture recognizer. Lost my, doesn't make sense, but okay. I guess it doesn't actually give you the variable name. So the add gesture recognizer adds the rotation gesture recognizer to the photo view, and that's how you associate the rotation, the rotator with the actual view. Then the last thing we need to do is we need to define this guy, handle rotate. So this is something that we have to code ourselves. It isn't overridden because this is something that we are defining ourselves. I'm going to just close this door. Okay, so create a func called this. I'm just going to copy it, paste it, and it will have passed in the actual recognizer. So anytime you implement a gesture recognizer of some kind, when you create the function signature is looking for a parameter passed in, and the parameter needs to be of the type of gesture recognizer that you're using. So if this were a pinch gesture recognizer, you'd be passing in a UI pinch gesture recognizer instead of rotation gesture recognizer. So in the handle rotate, this is where this is where the magic happens. Nothing would actually visually happen on screen if we didn't code it in here. We have to actually tell it what to do. So there is a property on the rotation gesture recognizer called the state. And this tells it basically what stage of action it's currently in. So we don't want to do, like, it'll go through the various sequences. It'll do the rotation begin, rotation changed, and then rotation ended. So we don't want to handle the ended. We just want to take it from the part where it's actually being manipulated. So what we can do is we can say if state equals UI gesture recognizer state dot began, or the or symbol equals UI gesture recognizer state dot changed. You can say let rotation equals recognizer dot rotation. And it's usually a good idea to pull the variable out of whatever the object is rather than trying to manipulate it directly. That's why I do that. So we can say photo view. Might be a good idea to say self, so there's no ambiguity. It's a class variable. If I could type dot transform. So transform is this guy. I mentioned this briefly, I think, in another class. This is a CG AFN transform. So this is a core graphics method. So when you're working with a gesture recognizer, you work with some core graphics objects. It's kind of pretty heavily intertwined. Core graphics functionality and anytime you're manipulating stuff on the screen. So the self.photoView.transform is equal to CG transform rotate is what I'm looking for. Rotate. So what we're doing is we're telling the photo you're going to transform yourself using this guy here, this core graphics method. And the actual transformation that we're going to use is in the and the amount of angle we're going to use is this guy here, rotation. And we have all right. Okay, we have to make sure we unwrap the objects correctly. Then the last thing we want to do before we're on our merry way is we want to reset the rotation to 0. And the reason for this is each time you come in here, if you don't set that rotation back to 0, the rotation gesture recognizer to 0, it would be additive, and it kind of spins out of control. It's kind of funny, but so we just want to make sure that it gets kind of weird when you're trying to move it, though. It sounds like you're kind of drunk or something. So what we'll do is we'll say the self.photoView, or I'm sorry, not the photo view, the recognizer dot rotation equals 0. That resets it. So what we did was we rotated we did the transform on the photo view, When we're done transforming the photo view, we set the rotation gesture recognizer back to 0. And we'll run it. And with this, you use the alt thing again, and you can. And I did something wrong. Okay. What did I miss? Ah, okay. Burn myself. Here it is again. So this is common. When you see something that says unrecognized instance sent, that is almost invariably because this guy is what we're calling, and because we pass in a parameter, we have to include a colon up there. And by doing that, that should correct it. Yeah, so then we can rotate our image.
Just
So is everyone able to spin their photo around?
Oh, it's Minnie. User error.
Done.
So we can come back and visit visit our photo manipulation stuff. Eventually, we can save that. You can actually save that photo off to your photo library, but that takes a fair amount of work. So we won't do it tonight because that gets into another topic. We're covering the tree view and that kind of stuff, table view and that kind of stuff. So we won't get into saving off photos to the camera roll, but we can do that later on. All right, so dancing pine tree. All right. So is everyone got their photo manipulated?
How do you get the second thing, the multi-touch?
Oh, the multi-touch. If you don't, oh, you mean to actually do it? Yeah, just press the Alt key,
The
and then yeah, that gives you the little circles.
okay.
I don't know.
Oh,
Okay, so hopefully everyone's got that going. So that last thing I wanted to do was show you a way of creating. I mean, what we have over here with our table view is fine, but it's pretty boring. So what I thought I would do is show you how to create custom table views that are a little more expressive, a little more involved than just a simple list of text like that. So you can see though that spinning up a regular simple table view is relatively easy, and it's really not that bad to make a custom one either. A couple ways of doing it. The way that is probably the preferred way by Apple and probably also the easiest way is to use an Xcode interface builder file. So that is what we will do next, is we'll customize our tree view to look a little bit nicer. Kind of weird how those fonts are just real wispy looking. But anyway, all right, so that's what we'll do next. So going back to our storyboard, let's see, how do I want to do this? All right, so what we'll do is we're going to create our own subclassed version of a UITableView cell. And to do that, we just come up to the folder, the project folder, right click and go new file. It is a Cocoa Touch class, and we'll call this guy tree view cell, and it will be derived from UITableViewCell. It gives you the option to also create a Xcode interface builder file and a zip file, but I'm going to show you guys how to do this if you don't have that checked and if you need to do it from scratch. Just go next and create, and that creates your tree view cell. Well, Xcode down it kind of pulled a little nasty here. They kind of, first of all, I misspelled it, but then they tacked on table view cell on the end of it, which if that happened for you, that's fine. If it didn't happen, that's fine too. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. This kind of bugs me sometimes because it does that without me noticing that it did that. But anyway, that's our class derived from UITableViewCell. You notice that it has a function inside it called awake from nib. Nib was the predecessor to the zib. So the XIB file is a XML file. Prior to that, they used nib files, which were binary files. So your resource files are binary. But for whatever reason, they never updated the name. They just kept that the way it was. So that's what the awake from nib is. That's if you have a zib file associated with your class, and when you first create it, this gets called awake from nib. So we'll probably end up using that guy. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so let's go back into our storyboard and let's do this. So we have our tree table view cell. If you want to create a table view cell and you want to use Interface Builder to help you create it, and you forgot to check the little box that says also create zip file, you can just create your own. And so to do that, if I go up to my folder level and I right click and do new file again, I can go ahead and this time I want to select user interface and view, go next. And this guy, it's a very, very good idea to call it the same thing that you call your Swift file. Same, I'm not going to be able to do that. Which they called it tree, I call it vel, tree view cell table view cell. This is the goofy name it gave it. And create. All right, and so that creates a regular view, a just generic UI view, vanilla wrapper, and we need to convert this guy into a zib that can be used for table view cell. So the way I do that, typically, or the easiest way is to have this selected in your interface builder designer and change, this time instead of changing it to an iPhone size, just change the simulated metrics to freeform, and then that will allow you to pretty much set it to the size you want. I can come down here and do this and size this guy up. So standard table view cell is going to be for the smaller iPhones. It can't really be much wider than like about 340 or so. And then the larger ones, it will be handled just fine. You'll have everything will display probably with a little bit of space. And then height-wise, we're gonna put the tree view images in here, so we'll probably want it to be about 120 high. So that will be our zip file for our UI table view cell. And now, if we bring our properties inspector back out here, and we go into the identity inspector, I can change this to tree view table view cell whatever that thing's called. All right. And when you associate it through the class name here, it also will change it over here in your scene view, and then that will wire up your class to your zip file. So if you ever are whipping through a project and creating a class and you forget to do the zip file, it's easy to remedy the problem just by doing that. All right, and then once you have that, it's relatively easy to create this programmatically and using the interface builder. So what we want is we want a picture of the tree to appear on the left-hand side of our table view cell, and we want it small, of course. You don't want it full size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out an image view. As soon as I find it. There we go. It's down too low. There's our image view. Plop that in your zib. And try to get close to the aspect ratio of the pictures, but we'll fix that when we set the properties on this. So now, if everything is wired up correctly, if I click over here at the tree view, cell, view, table view, cell thing, and then click on the assistant editor, it should bring up the right file, hopefully. Nope, didn't. So we'll close it. Do that again. Sometimes second time is the charm. There it is. Second time it just figures it out. Nope, that wasn't right. We'll try this. Okay, so there it is. We'll go ahead and we'll create an outlet for this image view. Control drag, create our outlet. And we'll just call it tree. I take that back. I'm going to make this more generic. Just call it image view in case you want to reuse it. Oh, wait, I can't do that. That's right. Okay, so it just gave me an error, compiler error. Everything is wired up correctly except saying property image view with the type UIImageView, cannot override strong property with weak property, getter, blah, 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 all this stuff, Objective-C, you're about to die. So what all this means is that there is a built-in image view property of the UITableView cell, which we're not going to use because it's very rigid as far as how it works. And we named ours the same thing as the subclass's name, so we can't do that. So instead we have to give it a different name. And because I did that, I'm probably going to have to delete the, I don't know if it created it over here or not. No, yeah, it did. So I got to get rid of that. So if you did that, make sure you come over here in your outlet inspector and delete it, or else you'll have a red line of death when you go to run that guy. All right. So I'll redo this, and I'll call it something different, like I was going to do initially anyway. So I'll just call this photo. No, call it tree view. There. That time it's perfectly happy and lets me do that. Okay. So now we have an outlet for our image view. Should probably put like a label next to it too and make the label like a nice font and stuff so it looks cool. Label. Drag them over there. Plop them on our zib, our table view cell zib. Size it up a little bit. We'll have to be careful with the properties of this so we don't smash stuff together, make it too big. This too, we'll also want to make an outlet for it. So we can just call it tree label. Okay, that's all good. All right, so that sets up our custom table view cell. So now, back at the ranch, if we go back into our view controller that controls this guy, the table view that is, we got to change a couple of things in our code. Now, instead of using the out-of-the-box UITableView and UITableViewCell, up here what we're doing is we're registering the UITableViewCell, but now we have a zip file with a custom class for our TableViewCell, so we're no longer registering that. Instead, delete this and start over. Say register nib is what we're doing. For cell reuse identifier, that stays the same. I bet I got a little ahead of myself. First we have to create a nib. You notice that this is a UI nib, it's not a string. So we need to create a nib. Really weird name. But anyway, equals UInib. And this does take a name. Nib name is the name over here. So I'm going to cheat a little bit and just copy it rather than trying to type that in. And you don't have to put .zib on the end of it. Just give it the name. Now the bundle. The bundle is it comes along with every application. Every iOS app has a bundle. The bundle is just all the resources, strings, images, sound files, video files, anything that you have that's a resource. So the bundle will contain, anytime you drag and drop images into a project, the bundle will contain these guys. And you can always check to see if your project has something like, sometimes sound files that are of the wrong format will not play. Things get kind of whacked. And I don't think they play correctly in a simulator. Sometimes they do, but it's kind of flaky. But anyway, to check to make sure that your bundle has resources, if you go up to your project level and go into your build phases, here is a copy bundle resources, and in here it shows you everything that's being copied as a resource. So that, you can see it says bundle right in the name, so that is the application's bundle. So when you call the when a method is calling for a NS bundle, that's what it wants, is the application's bundle. NS is the old next step, so this guy is not a UI class. This is actually a built-in like framework class. So to get the bundle, we say NS bundle dot main bundle. So that's a static method on NS bundle called main bundle, which just basically gets the bundle associated with the application. And now we can pass that, now we have the nib, and we can pass the nib into this guy, our register nib. And the for cell reuse identifier remains the same as it was before. We still use that. And now our table view is registered this customized table view cell, this guy. And down in here in the cell for row and index path, we don't have to change anything. We still DQ reusable cell with identifier. Okay, everyone follow along so far? All right. If you're having problems, let me know. Okay, so now the other thing we're going to do is this guy's no longer a standard UITableView cell that we're dequeuing. This is one of our special cells. So what we can say is as, we're going to typecast it, tree view cell, table view cell, cell. And we'll need to have that. And then because we have that, now we can get rid of this. And probably that too. So now we have a custom table view cell, not a stock out of the box table view cell. So we can set the properties in it. One thing I am going to do, we can do this either way. I'm going to do it through the storyboard this time. I'm going to come into the main storyboard and I'm sorry, not the main storyboard. I'm not thinking clearly. My zip file we created. Click on the image view, go to the properties, and I'm going to set the image scale mode to be aspect fit on the image instead of scale to fill, because the scale to fill it'll be huge. Aspect fit will mean that it fits to the bounding size of the image view that we've described here, and then it will fit it in the correct aspect ratio of the image. You can do that programmatically as well, but just as easy to do here. So now going back in our view controller. Okay, now we have this. You see what I called this stuff again. So it was tree label and tree view, simple enough. All right. So we need to create an image for our custom cell, just like we did before. Image named, and it's just trees, just like it is right below. I can copy and paste it, index path row, because we were so smart and created our tree names the same as the actual image file names. So that creates the image, and then we can say cell dot tree view dot image is just equal to image. And we want to change this text label here to be tree label. Otherwise, the image will probably not show up. Tree label dot text equals self.trees. Okay, so that works out correctly. One other thing I should probably do first is set some constraints so that our label is, so this is properly spaced. So what I'm going to do is do a control drag from the label over to my image view and set horizontal spacing on it. And with that, that should be, we'll make it like 10. Should give it enough room. And then we can go ahead and run this guy. And that doesn't look quite right. Yeah, things are kind of mucked up there. All right, so good enough. Fair enough. So we'll have to fix that. So what we can do, the good thing though, the good news is that it did work. It set the image, it just is a little bit wonky looking. So in our view controller, there is another table view method. Even though we set the size in our zip file, for some reason it just pretty much ignores that. So what we can do is we can say table view height for row and index path, height for not header or footer, height for row. And we can just set it to be like 115, make that 120. And it still isn't quite right.
Where were you for a second there?
What's that?
Which one were you on? What did you just do?
Oh, what I did was I coded in this table view height for row and index path.
Just another.
So if you just start typing table view, it'll come up. All right. Got that? So, let's see here. No. Size. I'm going to call that size to fit. And the other thing I'm going to do actually is, let's see. Yeah, I'll just try that. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Yeah, it's still really whacked. And it's not switching them either. Something else kind of weird with it. So something's not quite right. Index path that row, table view, self row. It's actually picking the right one though when it transfers over though, isn't it? Oak. Yeah, that works, but and then I get a little piece of the image. So I think my aspect fit should be right, but maybe it's not. Let's see here. Preview mode. Now, I guess I'll set it to scale to fill, but I don't think that's going to produce what we want. Nah, doesn't do anything. These guys are messed up, but they're at least kind of sized correctly. That other one is humongo. All right. I'm overlooking something. I know I am. I can try center, so you can play around with these. Yeah, that thing is just huge. No matter what I do. All right, let's set a constraint on the image view. Set a height constraint. And yeah, I'm going to set the scale mode of the image back to aspect fit. That just really whacked it. So I don't know, I got something messed up here. Not exactly what I was hoping for. I'm using his name, row, cell that tree label the text, turn cell, view cell, table view cell. So this gives you a chance to see how you can debug a problem like this. X0, Y0, size, G size. So bear with me while I try to debug this. Width 140. Nope. It's acting like it's not getting the right, even getting the right image. Something weird. Frame. Size to fit. I'm doing everything I could possibly do.
Your sizes work.
Did you get yours to work?
His sizes are better than what's going on over there.
Really? Did you do something different, Trevor?
No. I took some time, I didn't have the nib come into the UITableView cell when we imported it, so I had to build it.
Uh-huh.
That's a little bit different I did that I'm aware of.
Oh. Bad.
Size to fit seemed to be working.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I am not sure what I'm doing wrong here. It should be able to size it down. Origin, size to fit. Well, what I can do, yeah, it's so weird. It's not even, it's really whacked now. I've screwed it up worse than it was. So, oops. Alright, I'm gonna just experiment with this and size one of these guys.
Well, I mean, at least I have all the text now.
Yeah, I looked it up because
Yeah, John.
Weird question.
Yeah.
Happens, so like, when you have like a bigger picture, your cells get bigger to
Mhm.
match your picture.
Right.
What happens if your cell doesn't get bigger and then your picture and your label aren't lined up anymore?
Yeah, what it's trying to do is resolve that, and if it can't, it just, you get weird things like this happening. So what I did was I downsized that to get it to behave more normally, and that works. It should be able to size it itself, but I'm thinking what you'd probably have to do in this scenario is create two sized images, the full size and then the shrunken one. And I think that's probably what you'd have to do.
Sean,
Yeah.
I fixed my problem by setting a width constraint on the zip file on the image view.
Oh, okay. Let me try that.
And then I tried it on her project.
You fixed mine as well.
Oh, cool. Good job. Awesome.
I just start lining up the cells and all.
20.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe what's happening in mine, it's just,
Oh, looks nice.
not correct.
Yeah,
Your images
awesome.
all over, Jen?
No, I have them in,
Thanks.
mine, I have
Yeah,
the label
Jeff.
right next to them, but they're not lined up in the cell. They're-
Okay, if I have a fatal error or
Here,
unexpectedly found nil while unwrapping an optional value, where should I start fixing?
Depends on what it is. Which, does it say what object it is?
See mine?
The big pink highlighter is all over the DQ reusable cell with identifier.
Okay. Hang on just a second. I think we're about done anyway.
Oh, okay.
So,
And I have.
thanks much for the solution. The only other thing we have to do now is it doesn't quite, my table view doesn't quite fit completely.
So,
That makes perfect sense that you'd have to set both the height and width. All right, yeah, it looks a whole lot better. Okay, yeah, that's, you're John? Adam, all right, sorry, Adam. So what Adam did was he set the, had the height constraint, but he set the width as well. So that's, and that makes perfect sense, because if you have the one set, the other one still can vary. So by setting both of them, that basically,
I mean, I got my
Traps.
images like all nice aligned,
Uh-huh.
or smaller,
right?
it's just, they're not, like the cells, I like are green, white, but they're like shifted down and they're not in the actual cell itself.
Okay, so like the image you mean is not in the cell itself?
The image and the label.
And the label, okay. And did you set the cell height on the cell?
Maybe.
Because typically what happens if I remove that code, I think I might see what you're describing.
Oh.
There you go. Now click the little red light. Brain working like crazy and then get on your tab. Unless you click on this.
Are you seeing something like that, John?
No.
No? All right.
His, the pictures are like below his cell.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The name is in the bottom and the next one down doesn't start on the first.
I wonder if there's like just like an alignment issue with you have a constraint here that's forcing it like outside the bounds of the cell. Yeah, I can look at that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for now. That's about everything we're going to do. The only other thing I did was my view controller is I set the font of my label. That's the only other thing I did. So so that's kind of a whacked rendition of custom table view cell. But anyway, eventually got to where we were headed. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.